We're reading from chapter 11. Lord Chaitanya's devotees are all assembling. They found out that he's come back to Jagannath Puri. They've come in from Bengal, and they've all been introduced. And Lord Chaitanya greets them. Let's see, and he does all of these really close, intimate things with people. There's someone that Lord Chaitanya said, "It's so kind of you to come here, and you're so great." And he said, "No, I'm really fallen. I'm really awful." And then Lord Chaitanya brought him closer, and Lord Chaitanya just embraced him, and then like started brushing the dirt off of him, started cleaning him with his own hands. Because they had walked, whatever it is, 400 miles from Navadvip, 200 devotees. So text 161, after thus offering respect to each and every devotee, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very jubilant. However, not seeing Haridas Thakur, he inquired, "Where is Haridas?" Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then saw in the distance that Haridas Thakur was lying down flat on the road, offering obeisances. Haridas Thakur did not come to the Lord's meeting place, but remained fallen flat on the common road at a distance. All the devotees then went to Haridas Thakur, saying, "The Lord wants to meet you. Please come immediately." Haridas Thakur replied, "I cannot go near the temple because I am a low caste, abominable person. I have no authority to go there."
Haridas Thakur then expressed his desire. If I could just get a solitary place near the temple, I could stay there alone and pass my time. I do not wish the servants of Lord Jagannath to touch me. I would remain there in the garden alone. That is my desire. When this message was relayed to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the people, the Lord became very happy to hear it. At this time, Kashi Mishra, along with the superintendent of the temple, came and offered his respects unto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Upon seeing all the Vaishnavas together, Kashi Mishra and the superintendent became very happy. With great happiness, they met with the devotees in a befitting manner.
Both submitted to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Please give us orders so that we may make proper arrangements to accommodate all the Vaishnavas." Accommodations have been arranged for all the Vaishnavas. Now let us distribute Mahaprasadam to all of them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately told Gopinath Acharya, "Please go with the Vaishnavas and accommodate them in whatever residences Kashi Mishra and the temple superintendent offer." So this is just like the Sadhu Sangha festival. Like 1,500 devotees gather in North Carolina up at this yoga retreat place. Everyone's given a place to stay. There's a great big kitchen. They cook for everybody, and there's kirtans all day long. So this is something like that, except it's at Jagannath Puri and it's with Lord Chaitanya. Thus the Lord told Kashi Mishra and the temple superintendent, "As for the remnants of food left by Jagannath, let them be delivered to Vaninath Roy's charge, for he can take care of all the Vaishnavas and distribute Mahaprasadam to them." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "Nearby my place, in this garden of flowers, is a single room that is very solitary.
Please give that room to me, for I have a need for it. Indeed, I shall remember the lotus feet of the Lord, sitting in that solitary place." Kashi Mishra then told Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Everything belongs to you. What is the use of your begging? By your own will, you can take whatever you like." "My Lord, we are your two servants and are here just to carry out your orders. By your mercy, please tell us to do whatever you want." Saying this, Kashi Mishra and the temple inspector took their leave, and Gopinath and Vaninath went with them. Gopinath was then shown all the residential places, and Vaninath was given large quantities of food, Mahaprasadam, left by Lord Jagannath.
Anandi, are you ready?
Sure. Thus Vaninath Raya returned with large quantities of Lord Jagannath's food remnants, including cakes and other good eatables. Gopinath Acharya also returned after cleansing all the residential quarters. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then addressed all the Vaishnavas and requested that they listen to him. He said, "Now you can go to your respective at the top of the temple. After so doing, please come back here and take your lunch." After offering obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees departed for their residences, and Gopinath Acharya showed them their respective quarters. After this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to meet Haridas Thakur, and he saw him engaged in chanting the Maha Mantra with ecstatic love. Haridas chanted, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare."
As soon as Haridas Thakur saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately fell down like a stick to offer him obeisances, and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised him up and embraced him. When both the Lord and his servant began to cry in ecstatic love. Indeed, the Lord was transformed by the qualities of his servant, and the servant was transformed by the qualities of his master. Haridas Thakur said, "My dear Lord, please do not touch me, for I am most fallen and untouchable, and am the lowest among men." The Lord said, "I wish to touch you just to be purified, for your purified activities do not exist in me." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exalted Haridas Thakur, stating, "At every moment you take your bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage, and at every moment you perform great sacrifices, austerity, and charity."
You are constantly studying the 4 Vedas, and you are far better than any Brahmin or sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then recited the following verse. My dear Lord, one who always keeps your holy name on his tongue becomes greater than an initiated Brahmin. Although he may be born in a family of dog eaters and therefore by material calculation may be the lowest among men, he is still glorious. This is the wonderful effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord. It is therefore concluded that one who chants the holy name of the Lord should be understood to have performed all kinds of austerities and great sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. He has already taken his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. He has studied all the Vedas, and he is actually an Aryan. Saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Haridas Thakur within the flower garden, and there, in a very secluded place, he showed him his residence. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested Haridas Thakur, "Remain here and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. I shall personally come here to meet you daily. Remain here peacefully and look at the chakra on the top of the temple and offer obeisances. As far as your prasadam is concerned, I shall arrange to have that sent here."
When Nityananda Prabhu, Jagannatha Prabhu, Damodara Prabhu, and Mukunda Prabhu met Haridas Thakur, they all became very pleased. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to his residence after taking a bath in the sea, all the devotees headed by Advaita Prabhu went to bathe in the sea. After bathing in the sea, Advaita Prabhu and all the other devotees returned, and on their return, they saw the top of the Jagannath temple. They then went to the residence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take their luncheon. One after the other, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made all the devotees sit in their proper places. He then began to distribute prasadam with his own transcendental hand. All the devotees were served prasadam on plantain leaves. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributed on each slave a quantity suitable for 2 or 3 men to eat, for his hand could not distribute less than that.
Let's see. Eka eka pate anandina. All the devotees kept their hands raised over the prasadam distributed to them, for they did not want to eat without seeing the Lord eat first. Swarup Damodar then informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, unless you sit and take prasadam, no one will accept it. Gopinath Acharya has invited all the sannyasis to remain with you to Gopinath Acharya has invited all the sannyasis who remain with you to come and take prasadam. Gopinath Acharya has already come, bringing sufficient remnants of food to distribute to all the sannyasis. And sannyasis like Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati are waiting for you. You may sit down and accept the luncheon with Nityananda Prabhu, and I shall distribute the prasadam to all the Vaishnavas.
After this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu carefully delivered some prasadam into the hands of Govinda to be given to Haridas Thakur. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally sat down to accept lunch with the other sannyasis, and Gopinath Acharya began to distribute the prasadam with great pleasure. Then Swarup Damodar Goswami, Damodar Pandit, and Jagannananda all began to distribute prasadam to the devotees with great pleasure. They ate all kinds of cakes and sweet rice, filling themselves up to their throats, and at intervals they vibrated the holy name of the Lord in great jubilation. After everyone had finished his lunch and washed his mouth and hands, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally decorated everyone with flower garlands and sandalwood pulp.
After thus accepting prasadam, they all went to take rest at their respective residences, and in the evening they again came to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At this time, Ramananda Roy also came to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord took the opportunity to introduce him to all the Vaishnavas. The great personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then took all of them to the temple of Jagannath and began the congregational chanting of the holy name there. After seeing the Drupa Arti of the Lord, they all began congregational chanting. Then the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, came and offered flower garlands and sandalwood pulp to everyone. 4 parties were then distributed in 4 directions to perform Sankirtan, and in the middle of them, the Lord himself, known as the son of Mother Sachi, began to dance.
In the 4 groups, there were 8 mridangas and 32 cymbals. Altogether, they began to vibrate the transcendental sound, and everyone said, "Very good, very good." And the tumultuous vibration of Sankirtan resounded. All good fortune immediately awakened, and the sound penetrated the whole universe through the 14 planetary systems. When the congregational chanting began, ecstatic love immediately overflooded everything, and all the residents of Jagannath Puri came running. Everyone was astonished to see such a performance of Sankirtan, and they all agreed that never before had Kirtan been so performed and ecstatic love of God so exhibited. At this time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu circumambulated the temple of Jagannath and continuously danced about the whole area.
As the circumambulation was performed, the 4 kirtan parties sang in front and in the rear. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell down to the ground, Sri Nityananda Rai Prabhu lifted him up. While kirtan was going on, there was a transformation of ecstatic love and much tears, jubilation, trembling, perspiration, and deep resounding in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Upon seeing this transformation, all the people present became very much astonished. The tears from the eyes of the Lord came out with great force like water from a syringe. Indeed, all the people who surrounded him were moistened by his tears. After circumambulating the temple, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for some time remained at the rear of the temple and continued his Sankirtan. On all four sides, the four Sankirtan groups chanted very loudly, and in the middle, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced, jumping high.
After dancing for a long time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became still and ordered four great personalities to begin to dance. In one group, Nityananda Prabhu began to dance, and in another, Advaitacharya began to dance. Vakreshvara Pandita began to dance in another group, and yet in another group, Srivas Thakur began to dance. While the dancing was going on, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu watched them and performed a miracle. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stood in the middle of the dancers, and all the dancers in all directions perceived that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was looking at them.
Wanting to see the dancing of the four great personalities, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this miracle of seeing everyone simultaneously. Everyone who saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that he was performing a miracle, but they did not know how it was that he could see on all four sides. In his own pastimes in Vrindavan, when Krishna used to eat on the bank of the Jamuna and sit in the center of his friends, every one of the cowherd boys would perceive that Krishna was looking at him. In the same way, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu observed the dancing, everyone saw that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was facing him. When someone came nearby while dancing, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would tightly embrace him. Upon seeing the great dancing, great love and great Sankirtan, all the people of Jagannath Puri floated in an ecstatic ocean of love. Text 136, Matthew.
I am going to listen today.
Okay. And you have to make comments then.
Okay.
Hearing the greatness of the Sankirtan, King Prataparudra went up to the top of his palace and watched the performance with his personal associates. The king was very much astonished to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan, and the king's anxiety to meet him increased unlimitedly. After the Sankirtan ended, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu watched the offering of flowers to the Lord Jagannath deity. Then he and all the Vaishnavas returned to his residence. The superintendent of the temple then brought large quantities of prasadam, which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally distributed to all the devotees. Finally, they all departed to rest in bed. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Shachimata, performed his pastimes.
Anandi.
Oh, I was frozen there for a minute.
Oh,
As long as the devotees remained at Jagannath Puri with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the pastime of Sankirtan was performed with great jubilation every day. In this way, I have explained the Lord's pastime of Sankirtan, and I bless everyone with this benediction. By listening to this description, one will surely become a servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunatha, always desiring their mercy. I, Krishnadasa, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, following in their footsteps.
okay. So they did that every night while they were there, and they were there for 4 months. The Beda Kirtan pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Matthew asks, what does Beda mean? Why are they called the Beda Kirtans? So I'm looking at the chapter introduction, and I don't see anything. What does Beda mean? And I've been reading this for 100 years now, and I never thought to ask that question. Okay. Let's go to text chapter 12.
But this is a
Um,
very significant year, isn't it, for in Jagannath Puri?
a significant year. This
Yes,
year, what do you?
because there's going to be no Yatiratra.
Oh, this year, yeah, the year 2020. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Wow. Yeah, if they gathered all those people and one person coughed, it would just spread all over. That's a big risk.
Yeah.
Text 1. I see something about a humorous statement. Okay, so that's coming up. Some humorous statements are coming up. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the Gundicha temple with his devotees and associates. In this way, he made it as cool and bright as his own heart, and thus he made the temple a befitting place for the Lord to sit. All glories to Gaurachandra. All glories to Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra. And all glories to all the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, headed by Srivas Thakur. I beg their power so that I can properly describe Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned from his South Indian tour, Maharaj Prataparudra, the king of Orissa, became very anxious to meet him. The king sent a letter from his capital, Katak, to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, entreating him to obtain the Lord's permission so that he could go and see him.
Replying to the king's letter, the Bhattacharya wrote that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had not given his permission. After this, the king wrote him another letter. In this letter, the king requested Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, please appeal to all the devotees associated with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and submit this petition to them on my behalf. If all the devotees associated with the Lord are favorably disposed toward me, they can submit my petition at the lotus feet of the Lord. By the mercy of all the devotees, one can attain the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Without his mercy, my kingdom does not appeal to me. If Gaura Hari, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, will not show mercy to me, I shall give up my kingdom become a mendicant and beg from door to door.
I think Suprita is online.
What did you say?
Suprita is online.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm listening today.
Okay.
And Anandi is frozen again. Oh, man.
For inspection. Upon reading the letter, everyone was astonished to see that King Prataparudra had so much devotion for the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The devotees gave their opinion and said, the Lord will never meet the king, and if we requested him to do so, the Lord would surely feel very unhappy. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then said, we shall go once again to the Lord, and we shall not request him to meet the king. Rather, we shall simply describe the good behavior of the king.
Having thus reached a decision, they all went to the place of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There, although ready to speak, they could not even utter a word. After they arrived at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's place, the Lord, seeing them, said, what have you all come here to say? I see that you want to say something, but you do not speak. What is the reason? Nityananda Prabhu said, we want to tell you something. Although we cannot stay without speaking, we are still very much afraid to speak. We want to submit before you something that may or may not be befitting. The matter is this, unless he sees you, the king of Orissa, will become a mendicant. Nityananda Prabhu continued, the king has decided to become a mendicant and accept the sign of a mendicant by wearing an ivory earring. He does not want to enjoy his kingdom without seeing the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu.
Nityananda Prabhu continued, the king also expressed his desire to see the moon-like face of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his eyes' full satisfaction. He would like to raise the lotus feet of the Lord to his heart. Hearing all these statements, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind was certainly softened, but externally he wished to speak some harsh words. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I can understand that you all desire to take me to Kataka to see the king.
All right, let's read this purport. This purport's interesting.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is naturally the reservoir of all kindness, and as soon as he heard the statement made by the king, his heart immediately softened. Thus the Lord was ready to go see the king, even at Kataka. He did not even consider allowing the king to come from Kataka to Jagannath Puri to see him. It is significant that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so kind that he was ready to go see the king at Kataka. Apparently, it was never expected that the king wanted to see the Lord at his place. But by way of being externally harsh, the Lord indicated that if all the devotees so desired, he would go to Kataka to see the king.
So kind of a Freudian slip almost.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, what to speak of spiritual advancement, all the people will blaspheme me, and what to speak of all the people, Damodar would chastise me. I shall not meet the king at the request of all the devotees, but I shall do so if Damodar will give his permission.
All right, let's read this purport too. It goes into a bit of the character of who Damodar Pandit is. It's a long purport. Maybe we should break it up. We'll each take 2 cents.
From the spiritual point of view, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to see materialistic people, especially a king who is always engaged in counting pounds, shillings, and pence. Indeed, the meeting between a sannyasi and a king is always considered abominable.
A sannyasi is always subjected to public criticism, and a small fault on his part is taken seriously by the public. People actually expect a sannyasi to preach and not take part in any social or political matters.
If a sannyasi is subject to public criticism, his preaching will not be fruitful. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically wanted to avoid such criticism so that his preaching work would not be hampered.
It so happened that while the Lord was talking to his disciples at that time, the devotee Damodar Pandit was present. This Damodar Pandit was a very faithful devotee and a staunch lover of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Whenever there was anything that might touch or taint the character of the Lord, Damodar Pandit would immediately point it out, not even considering the exalted position of the Lord. It is sometimes said that fools rush in where angels dare not. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to point out Damodar Pandit's foolishness in coming forward to criticize the Lord.
This is why the Lord stated that if Damodar Pandit would give his permission, he would go to see the king. There was deep meaning in this statement, for it is a warning that Damodar should not dare criticize the Lord anymore, for it was not befitting his position as a devotee.
Is this Swarup Damodar we're talking about? Different guy.
Damodar Pandit, yeah, it's a different Damodar.
Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was considered the guide and spiritual master of all the devotees living with him. Damodar Pandit was one of them, and the Lord rendered Damodar Pandit a special favor by warning him to avoid criticizing him any further.
A devotee or a disciple should never attempt to criticize the Lord or his representative, the spiritual master.
Okay, so if Damodar says it's okay, then I'll go. Anandi, go ahead. Next verse.
Where are we?
26.
Sorry, I lost track. Is it 30?
26.
Oh,
26.
okay. Damodar immediately replied, Damodar immediately replied, "My lord, you are fully independent, supreme personality of Godhead. Since everything is known to you, you know what is permissible and what is not permissible. I am merely an insignificant jiva, so what power do I have to give directions to you? By your own personal choice, you will meet the king. I shall see it. The king is very much attached to you, and you are feeling affection and love toward him. Thus I can understand that by virtue of the king's affection for you, you will touch him. Although you are the supreme personality of Godhead and are completely independent, still you are dependent on the love and affection of your devotees. This is your nature." Nityananda Prabhu then said, "Who is there in the three worlds who can ask you to see the king?"
So, wow, Damodar, he's pretty bold. He comes across like really humble, but he says, but I know you're going to go see him. Like, I can just tell, because I can see that you're already getting softened up by him. Then Nityananda says, who can tell you to go see a king? Still, isn't it the nature of an attached man to give up his life if he does not attain his desired object? For instance, some of the wives of the Brahmins who were performing sacrifices gave up their lives in the presence of their husbands for the sake of Krishna. Nityananda Prabhu then submitted one suggestion for the Lord's consideration. There is a way, he suggested, by which you need not meet the king, but which would enable the king to continue living. If you, out of your mercy, send one of your outer garments to the king would live, hoping to see you sometime in the future. The Lord said, since you are all very learned personalities, whatever you decide, I shall accept.
Lord Nityananda Prabhu then obtained an external garment used by the Lord by requesting it from Govinda. Thus, Nityananda Prabhu delivered the old cloth into the care of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sent it to the king. When the king received the old cloth, he began to worship it exactly as he would worship the Lord personally. After returning from his service in South India, Ramananda Rai requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramananda Rai requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramananda Rai to make a meeting arrangement.
The king told Ramananda Roy, "Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit any meeting with him without fail." The king and Ramananda Roy returned together to Jagannath Kshetrapuri, and Sri Ramananda Roy met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At this time, Ramananda Roy informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. Sri Ramananda Roy was indeed a diplomatic minister for the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. Maharaja Prataparudra, in great anxiety, could not endure not seeing the Lord. Therefore, Sri Ramananda Roy, by his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord.
So text 44 talks about diplomacy being used in a good way. There's a purport. A diplomat in the material world knows how to deal with people, especially in political affairs. Some of the great devotees of the Lord, like Ramananda Roy, Raghunath Das Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Rupa Goswami, were government officers and had a background of very opulent householder life. Consequently, they knew how to deal with people. Okay, so they knew how to deal with people. That was their job. Text 46. Sri Ramananda Roy frankly requested Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Ramananda, you should make this request after duly considering whether it would be fitting for a sannyasi to meet a king. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king. Ramananda Roy replied, my lord, you are the supreme independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anyone because you are not dependent on anyone. When Ramananda Roy addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, I am not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in three ways, with my body, mind, and words.
As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like wildfire. A black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It is always very prominent. Ramananda Rai replied, my dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This king Prataparudra, the king of Orissa, is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, there may be much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable. The king certainly possesses all good qualities. But simply by taking up the name king, he has infected everything. But if you are still very eager for the king to meet with me, please first bring his son to meet me. So that reminds me of a incident that happened at the temple in Utah. And there was this devotee that was visiting, and he was in the kitchen, and he was going through the cupboards, and he found all of these flavoring extracts in the cupboard. And he saw that they had alcohol in them, and so he threw them all away. And Vaibhavi was really upset.
So here's a scriptural injunction. Yeah. Okay, I thought you were going to say something about somebody's son came along.
Nope, it was the alcohol because there's alcohol in those extracts, most of them.
Yep.
But of course, it cooks away. But
a drop of liquor,
right?
Much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable.
So you can't put a little Kahlua in your milk? No? Okay.
Well, not for Lord Chaitanya. It would be polluted.
Okay.
Any kind of liquor, it would be considered for him as untouchable. Also, it's an example given in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, something about if you have a clay pot that's held wine, and no matter how many times you wash it, it's never pure.
Yeah. When we have some friends who, it's an Indian man married to a white American lady, and whenever his parents would come from India to visit, they would be very concerned about whether they could eat the food made in their pots. And they would say, has this pot ever had meat in it?
Mm-hmm.
And they basically would lie to them and say, no, never, ever.
Oh my God.
Yep. It's a thing, and there are let's see, there are different standards of cleanliness. There's like a ritual cleanliness, and then there would be like a surgical cleanliness, like what you're doing. It has to be actually uh, scientific kind of cleanliness. And then just kind of normal, clean cleanliness. But the ritual cleanliness depends on a lot of rituals, chanting of mantras and things like that. And yeah, scientifically, if meat had been cooked in a pot, there won't be any, if it's a stainless steel pot, you can scrub out every particle and you'd be safe. But according to ritual cleanliness, it's like, well, meat has been cooked in this building, so therefore we have to burn the building down or something. And that's something that happens. Let's see, where are those stories? Okay, I think they're in the Adi Lila. Somebody offends a devotee. This guy's just like really rude to devotees. And so what happens is the Muslims come to the guy's house. And in his house, they bring a cow into his courtyard and they slaughter the cow, cut it up and cook it and eat it right there. And that's like, just because, and that just shows like, if you offend a devotee, your life just gets worse and worse. And then after that, his life just did get much worse. And then, let's see, what happened with that guy? I think he met Lord Caitanya again, said, I'm sorry, and kind of came back around.
I think Narsimha comes in that Muslim's dream, right? And
Well,
says you. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's about the Chandkazi, yeah. But this was, is that the guy that criticized Haridas Thakur or Srivas? Criticized Srivas? Anyway, we'll come to that. But I'm just saying ritual cleanliness. If something really bad happens.
I'm like that too.
Yeah, there's something to it.
But it's very hard. In US, if you have to eat out, it's very hard to follow
It's
that.
impossible. Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah. The safest thing I've ever done when I'm in a situation where I've got to eat out, I just request a baked potato. We'll be at a super fancy restaurant and they'll say, oh, I'll have a baked potato and don't put anything on it. And so everybody's having all this fancy stuff and I'm eating a baked potato. I'm like, wow, this is the best baked potato I've ever had. So that's the safe thing, because they don't have to cut it with their knives. They're just baking it in an oven and all kinds of gruesome things in that oven. Okay, anyway, ritual cleanliness. What he's saying is this person may be really nice, but because he's got the name King, that's like a drop of abominable liquor touching the milk. So all of the milk is contaminated. Anandi, are you ready to read text 56?
Yes, my audio is cutting in and out, but if you can you hear me? I guess you can.
Yep, we hear you now.
It is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the Son represents the Father. Therefore, the Son's meeting with me would be just as good as the King's meeting with me. Ramananda Roy then went to inform the king about his talks with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and following the Lord's orders, brought the king's son to see him. The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Upon seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak.
Here is a great devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Maharaj Nanda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I have become very much obligated just by seeing this boy. After saying this, the Lord again embraced the prince. As soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. The boy began to cry and dance, and he chanted, Krishna, Krishna. Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calmed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him.
Ramananda Roy and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramananda took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities. Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. Ooh. I have an error. Here we go. From then on, the fortunate prince was one of the most intimate devotees of the Lord. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted in the society of his pure devotees, performing his pastimes and spreading the Sankirtan movement. Some of the prominent devotees, like Advaitacharya, used to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take his meals at their homes. The Lord accepted such invitations, accompanied by his devotees.
And Anandi, are you with us? Looks like she is not. There you go. Text 71, Anandi.
Okay. In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When these three people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Gundicha. Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Gundicha temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform. The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders.
My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him, and with his own hand smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gundicha.
Where do they get all this sandalwood pulp? Seems like they're always using it. Is it, I mean, don't you have to cut down a tree or something to make it?
Yeah, cut off branches from a sandalwood tree. There was one that just down the road from the temple in Miami. So I don't think they're that hard to grow.
Oh, no, they are.
They're hard to grow?
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They're
You know,
very expensive.
What's,
People steal it. It's so expensive.
yeah, but what's the challenge to growing them, Anandi?
There's just some trees are very finicky, you know. So sandalwood is one of them, and they're hard to replace once you lose them.
Uh-huh. But there was one, it was just down the road from the temple in Miami, and it didn't seem like it was anybody made a big deal out of it. But yeah, I guess you could just go there and cut off a
I
few branches.
guess when you're harvesting a lot of sandalwood, you know, in India it's become endangered.
Yeah,
Sandalwood tree.
yeah,
Because there's that story of Madhavendra Puri going around and recruiting all those people to help gather sandalwood for Gopal,
yeah. Do you remember where he went to get that sandalwood?
Jagannath Puri.
Yeah. But the Malaya Hills, that's supposed to be where it used to grow a lot. Where are those Malaya Hills? That wouldn't be Malaysia.
Mhm.
I wonder if
I don't know.
Sukriti, what are the Malaya Hills that are always talked about where they're growing the sandalwood? Anyway, it must not be very far from Jagannath Puri because that seemed to be a place where they were getting a lot of it. And devotees use it for puja. You get a little stick of sandalwood, and you have the stone thing. You put a little rose water, and then you rub it, and then take a tulsi leaf and the little paste, and you stick it on the feet of your deity, your Krishna deity. You grind that up, and you get a flower, and you dip it in that paste, and you put it on Prabhupada's forehead, and then you go around, put it on all of the devotees. It's supposed to cool you down.
I bet it smells very nice.
Smells good, yeah, and it has a cooling effect. And sometimes you'll see pictures of Prabhupada with this yellow stuff all over his forehead. That's sandalwood. And sometimes they will make decorations out of it. They'll like we put tilak. Some people will make tilak out of sandalwood. And then they'll make all kinds of other marks all over their body. They get a little stamp, and you stamp it in that tilak paste, and then put it all over. And there's a song that talks about Lord Caitanya having beautiful decorations of sandalwood. So he's putting sandalwood on him, and let's see, did he give him flower garlands too, or gave him a broom? This time, instead of a flower garland, he gave him a broom.
So Gundicha, is that the Jagannath temple, or is that a different temple?
It's different temple. It's down the road from the Jagannath temple. The Rath Yatra goes to Gundicha, and Jagannath stays there for like a week or so. And then there's a return Rath Yatra festival. It's also really big.
Okay.
Hey, Mitra, I have a question.
Okay.
I just found out that the Jagannath Ashtakam was composed by Sri Shankaracharya.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, so cool. Really? I'm going to have to look into that. Jagannath Ashtakam. All right. Jagannath Ashtakam by Adi Shankaracharya with lyrics. Okay. Well, well, well. Huh. I'm never going to sing that song again then. Mayavadi song. All right. We're going to You're really stirring the pot. Are you with us?
I love that
Anandi?
song.
Yeah, it's a good song. Anandi is frozen now. She made her trouble and then disappeared. All right, in this way, or wait, is it my turn? I think it is. In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Gundicha temple. At first, they cleansed the temple with the brooms. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, Singhasana, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the kirtan hall. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the temple in great jubilation, chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna all the time. Similarly, all the devotees were also chanting and at the same time performing their respective duties. So somewhere in here there's a great big purport, and we need to read that. So you're watching the purports, Matthew. And let me know when it comes up. Go ahead.
The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. In this way, it became transcendently beautiful. At times, when cleansing the temple, the Lord shed tears, and in some places he even cleansed with those tears. After this, the place where the deity's food was kept, Bhoga Mandir, was cleansed. Then the yard was cleansed, and then all the residential quarters, one after the other. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of sand in one place, he gathered it all in his cloth and threw it outside. Following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees in great jubilation began to gather straws and dust with their own cloths and throw them outside the temple. The Lord then told the devotees, "I can tell how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside."
Okay, Anandi is checking out. Even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. After the inside of the temple was cleansed, the Lord again allotted areas for the devotees to cleanse. The Lord then ordered everyone to cleanse the inside of the temple very perfectly by taking finer dust, straws, and grains of sand and throwing them outside. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temple for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing work. While the temple was being swept, about 100 men stood ready with filled water pots, and they simply awaited the Lord's order to throw the water from them.
As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water, all the men immediately brought the 100 water pots, which were completely filled, and delivered them before the Lord. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first washed the main temple and then thoroughly washed the ceiling, the walls, the floor, the sitting place, Simhasana, and everything else within the room. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his devotees began to throw water onto the ceiling. When this water fell, it washed the walls and floor. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to wash the sitting place of Lord Jagannath with his own hands, and all the devotees began to bring water to the Lord. All the devotees within the temple began to wash. Each one had a broom in his hand, and in this way they cleansed the temple of the Lord.
Someone brought water to pour into the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and someone poured water on his lotus feet. The water that fell from the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was drunk by someone who hid himself. Someone else begged for that water, and another person was given that water in charity. After the room was washed, the water was let out through an outlet, and it then flowed and filled the yard outside. The Lord mopped the rooms with his own clothes, and he polished the throne with them also. In this way, all the rooms were cleansed with 100 water pots. After the rooms had been cleansed, the minds of the devotees were as clean as the rooms.
When the temple was cleansed, it was purified, cool, and pleasing, just as if the Lord's own pure mind had appeared. Since hundreds of men were engaged in bringing water from the lake, there was no place to stand on the banks. Consequently, someone began to draw water from a well. Hundreds of devotees brought water in the pots, and hundreds took the empty pots away to fill them up again. With the exception of Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Swarup Damodar, Ramananda Bharati, and Paramananda Puri, everyone was engaged in filling the water pots and bringing them there. Many of the water pots were broken when people collided with one another, and hundreds of men had to bring new water pots to fill.
Some people were filling the pots, and others were washing the rooms, but everyone was engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and Hari. One person begged for a water pot by chanting the holy names, Krishna, Krishna, and another delivered a pot while chanting Krishna, Krishna. Whenever anyone had to speak,
God, stop it.
by uttering the holy name of Krishna. Consequently, the holy name of Krishna became an indication for everyone who wanted something. As Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was vibrating the holy name of Krishna in ecstatic love, he himself was performing the work of hundreds of men. It appeared as though Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu were cleansing and washing with 100 hands. He approached every devotee just to teach him how to work.
Can I read?
Oh, sure.
When he saw someone doing nicely, the Lord praised him. But if he saw that someone was not working to his satisfaction, he immediately chastised that person, not bearing him any grudge. The Lord would say, "You have done well. Please teach this to others so that they may act in the same way." As soon as they heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. They washed the Jagan Mohana area and then the place where food was kept. All other places were also washed. In this way, the meeting place was washed, the entire yard, the raised sitting places, the kitchen, and every other room.
Thus, all places around the temple were thoroughly washed within and without. After everything was thoroughly washed, a Vaishnav from Bengal, who was very intelligent and simple, came and poured water on the lotus feet of the Lord. The Gaudiya Vaishnav then took that water and drank it himself. Seeing that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt a little unhappy and was also outwardly angry. Although the Lord was certainly satisfied with him, he became angry externally in order to establish the etiquette of religious principles. The Lord then called for Swarup Damodar and told him, "Just see the behavior of your Bengali Vaishnav."
This person from Bengal has washed my feet within the temple of the personality of Godhead. Not only that, but he has drunk the water himself. I now do not know what my destination is because of this offense. Indeed, your Bengali Vaishnav has greatly implicated me. At this point, Sri Swarup Damodar caught the Gaudiya Vaishnav by the neck and, giving him a little push, ejected him from the Gundicha temple and made him stay outside. After Swarup Damodar returned within the temple, he requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excuse that innocent person. After this incident, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied. He then asked all the devotees to sit down in 2 lines on both sides.
So there was a purport on 127. I don't know if that's the one you were looking for.
No, that one is, Prabhupada says, because he says to Swarup Damodar, your Bengali Vaishnav, Prabhupada makes an issue out of all the Vaishnavs in Bengal are under Swarup Damodar. They're all under his charge. 131, Suprita.
131, right? The
Yeah.
Lord then personally sat down in the middle and picked up all kinds of straw, grains of sand, and dirty things. While Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was picking up the straws and grains of sand, he said, I shall gather everyone's collection, and I shall ask whoever has collected less than all the others to pay a fine of sweet cakes and sweet rice. In this way, all the quarters of the Gundicha temple were completely cleansed and cleared. All quarters were cool and spotless, like one's cleansed and pacified mind. When the water from the different rooms was finally let out through the halls, it appeared as if new rivers were rushing out to meet the waters of the ocean. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done.
There's a purport here as well.
Okay, let's read that one. And he goes into an extensive description of cleaning your heart. Oh, wow. This is a big one. This might be the one. Okay. Let's break it up. Everyone read 2 sentences.
135.
Yeah, starting with you, Suprita.
Okay. In commenting on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart. As prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshas. Oh, I'm sorry. Next. Whoever's done with this.
Yeah, keep going.
In his Shikshashtaka, Cheto Darpana Marjana.
In this age, everyone's heart is especially unclean, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Hridyantaha stohiya bhadrani. To wash away all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna mantra.
The first result will be that the heart is cleansed. Chito Darpana Marjanam. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this statement. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridyantasto Hyabhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. If a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Shrinvatam Swakatah Krishna.
This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he is already seated there.
Krishna wants to continue living within the heart. And the Lord wants to give directions, but one has to keep his heart as clean as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kept the Gundicha temple. The devotee therefore has to cleanse his heart, just as the Lord cleansed the Gundicha temple.
In this way, one can be pacified and enriched in devotional service. If the heart is filled with straw, grains of sand, weeds, or dust, in other words, Anyabhilasha Purna, one cannot enthrone the Supreme Personality of Godhead there.
The heart must be cleansed of all material motives brought about through fruitive work, speculative knowledge, the mystic yoga system, and so many other forms of so-called meditation. The heart must be cleansed without ulterior motive.
As Srila Rupa Goswami says, Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyana Avritam In other words, there should not be any external motive.
One should not attempt material upliftment, understanding the supreme by speculative knowledge, fruitive activity, severe austerity, and penance, and so on. All these activities are against the natural growth of spontaneous love of Godhead.
As soon as these are present within the heart should be understood to be unclean and therefore unfit to serve as Krishna's sitting place. We cannot perceive the Lord's presence in our hearts unless our hearts are cleansed.
A material desire is explained as the desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. In modern language, this is called economic development.
An inordinate desire for economic development is considered to be like straws and grains of sand within the heart. If one is overly engaged in material activity, the heart will always remain disturbed.
As stated by Narottam Das Thakur, Samsara Vishanale Divanishi Hiya Jawale Juda Ite Na Kainu Upaya. In other words, endeavor for material opulence is against the principle of devotional service.
Material enjoyment includes activities such as great sacrifices for auspicious activity, charity, austerity, elevation to the higher planetary systems, and even living happily within the material world. Modernized material benefits are like the dust of material contamination.
When this dust is agitated by the whirlwind of fruitive activity, it overcomes the heart. Thus, the mirror of the heart is covered with dust.
Okay, wait a minute. This whirlwind of fruitive activities, modernized material benefits are like the dust of material contamination. This is Bhakti Siddhanta speaking, and his modernized material benefits are the things that were going on back in the 30s at the latest. Modernized material benefits like automobiles and electric lights, they're like the dust of material contamination when this dust is agitated by the whirlwind of fruitive activity. So a lot of this is like going right over my head, just because of the language. I'm trying to catch it. It started off pretty good. If you want Krishna to come into your heart, you got to clean it. Now Bhaktisiddhanta is like doing his scrupulous, surgical, and you got to go to medical school to understand what he's talking about here. And all of these quotes by Rupa Goswami, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Gyanakarma Dhyanavritam. There are long, long lectures and essays on these points. And this is the kind of stuff that Anandi doesn't like to hear. Criticizing all of these other paths. He even says that other types of meditation, you should just meditate on Krishna and only want to serve Krishna. Okay, he's going to talk about karmis and elephant bathing. Let's scroll down. This is, I want to see, otherwise we're just going to read it and it'll just be a lot of words. Okay, go down to the next paragraph. By his practical example, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has shown us that all the grains of sand must be picked up thoroughly and thrown outside. Let's try starting from there. I think it's Matthew's turn.
By his practical example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has shown us that all the grains of sand must be picked up thoroughly and thrown outside. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cleansed the outside of the temple, fearing that the grains of sand would again come within.
In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that even though one may become free from the desire for fruitive activity, Sometimes the subtle desire for fruitive activity again comes into being. One often thinks of conducting business to improve devotional activity.
But the contamination is so strong that it may later develop into misunderstanding. Described as kutinati, fault finding, and pratishtasha. Pratishtasha, the desire for name and fame and for high position. Jiva himsa, envy of other living entities. Nishidachara, chara, accepting things forbidden in the Shastra. Kama, desire for material gain. And puja, hankering for popularity. The word kutinati means duplicity.
As an example of pratishtasa, one may attempt to imitate Srila Haridas Thakur by living in a solitary place.
One's real desire may be for name and fame. In other words, one thinks that fools will accept one to be as good as Haridas Thakur just because one lives in a solitary place. These are material desires. Okay.
A neophyte devotee is certain to be attacked by other material desires as well, namely the desires for women and money. In this way, the heart is again filled with dirty things and becomes harder and harder, like that of a materialist. Gradually, one desires to become a reputed devotee or an avatara, incarnation.
The word jivahimsa, envy of other living entities, actually means stopping the preaching of Krishna consciousness. Preaching work is described as paropakara, welfare activities for others.
Those who are ignorant of the benefits of devotional service must be educated by preaching. If one stops preaching and simply sits down in a solitary place, he is engaging in material activity.
If one desires to make a compromise with the Mayavadis, he is also engaged in material activity. A devotee should never make compromises with non-devotees.
By acting as a professional guru, mystic yogi, or miracle man, one may cheat and bluff the general public and gain fame as a wonderful mystic, but all this is considered to be dust, straw, and grains of sand within the heart. In addition, one should follow the regulative principles and not desire illicit sex, gambling, intoxicants, or meat.
Okay. What did you get from that? Any of you had plans to become a miracle man or to make compromises with Mayavadis? These are like really specific things to Bhaktisiddhanta's time. There was a lot of that going on in the name of Vaishnavism, just to become popular. Bhaktisiddhanta was like so strict on all of that kind of stuff, just to hold it to the high standard. Oh man, sometimes it was painful to hear the way he talks about it. It's like, oh no.
I like what he said about economic development.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Politically, I guess, everyone just assumes, the pundits on the CNN and whatnot, and Fox Business and all this, they just seem to assume that the goal that everybody should have is to just have ever increasing economic development. And we just expect that the GDP and all of these indices are just going to keep going up and up and up and up and up forever. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, first of all, what's the point? And secondly, how high can all of this stuff go? I mean, mostly what we're doing is destroying the environment for no reason.
Yeah, and people aren't becoming happy from it either.
It's not like they're producing stuff that people actually need.
Yeah, yep, that's a whole other thing.
Even in my own industry, we have all this technology and we spend all this money, time, and effort, and a lot of it is to relieve suffering and cure disease, but also a lot of it is to just keep somebody alive for perhaps even just a short period of time.
Yeah, and not even a very nice short period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the part where he said, after cleaning the temple, the devotees' minds were also cleansed. That was awesome. Because I really feel that I cleaned the entire house today and it felt so nice.
Okay, she's bringing it on home. She's making it practical. It also talks about cooled. The whole place was cleansed, and then it was cooled. Also, they're throwing all that water all over the place. And so it said two things. The devotee's mind is cleansed and pacified. And I'm looking, this paragraph, this looks interesting. To give us practical instructions, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cleansed the temple twice. His second cleansing was more thorough. The idea was to throw away all the stumbling blocks on the path of devotional service. He cleansed the temple with firm conviction, as is evident from his using his own personal garments for cleaning. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to see personally that the temple was thoroughly cleansed to the standard of clean marble. Clean marble gives a cooling effect. Devotional service means attaining peace from all disturbances caused by material contamination. In other words, it is the process by which the mind is cooled. The mind can be peaceful and thoroughly cleansed when one no longer desires anything but devotional service. The clean marble gives a cooling effect. Dirty marble apparently doesn't. Now, as scientists might challenge the statement, that's kind of like a ritualistic or kind of a feeling, or what would you say, an emotional feeling that you get. But Prabhupada gave really clear instructions.
Well, I think the evaporation of water actually does lead to cooling.
Yep. So there you go. There's the science behind it. And that's what was going on. They had 100 water pots. That's a lot of water pots. They didn't have hoses and water pressure. It was all dependent on pots being carried. And he even said at the lake, there was no room on the bank because so many people were busy filling pots. So some people went off to wells to fill up water pots.
In South India, like in front of every house, they clean the front of the house with water and they use a broom to clean it, and they put like white rangoli, like design, and they do it every morning. Every morning they clean the front of the house. So they do that even in temples.
And sometimes they'll sprinkle water over the road because the road might be dusty. Okay, good. Suprita's bringing it home, making it so we can relate to it. But I was going to say, Prabhupada talks about in the Vrindavan temple, he said, pour water on the marble and then clean it off with a squeegee. And you do that every day, and that'll polish that marble and make it really shiny and smooth. So he grew up doing things like that. And he never saw air conditioning. Practically his whole life, there was no air conditioning in India. They depended on this cooling effect of marble and water evaporating. He also talks about in the Nectar of Devotion, I think, he talks about making a fountain of flowers and putting that in the temple. And people would come in and feel refreshed by the coolness from all of those flowers. So that's another thing. You wear flower garlands, it kind of cools you down. So you got flower garlands, you got sandalwood, you've got clean marble. All of these things are just to help keep you cool. So skip the paragraph and start the next paragraph. By his practical activity. Let's read just a little bit. We'll finish off that paragraph.
By his practical activities, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informed us how to cleanse our hearts. Once the heart is cleansed, we should invite Lord Sri Krishna to sit down, and we should observe the festival by distributing prasadam and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Okay, that right there, that's the best sentence in the whole purport. Clean your heart, then hold a festival. And what are you supposed to do at that festival? Come on, two things.
Prasadam.
Distribute prasadam and
Chanting.
chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Okay, go ahead, Suprita, you read the next.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to teach every devotee by his personal behavior. Everyone who spreads the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts a similar responsibility.
The Lord was personally chastising and praising individuals in the course of the cleansing, and those who are engaged as acharyas must learn from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to train devotees by personal example. The Lord was very pleased with those who could cleanse the temple by taking out undesirable things accumulated within.
This is called anartha nivriti, cleansing the heart of all unwanted things. Thus, the cleansing of the Gundicha Mandir was conducted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to let us know how the heart should be cleansed and soothed to receive the Lord Sri Krishna and enable him to sit within the heart without disturbance.
Oh man, that was the best paragraph in the whole purport. I like that. And since you're a surgeon, I'm curious about surgical